What a crazy final week for the Eastern Conference of this NHL hockey season. I mean, just yesterday we had around 3 different teams competing for the wild card spot, and against all odds, the Washington Capitals end up getting in. I don't know if people are upset about this. I think I would have rather seen Detroit get in. That final play of their season, coming back 2 games in a row against Montreal to try to keep their season alive, just to have it ruined by a strange decision from the Philadelphia Flyers. It almost seems poetic for the Washington Capitals and should give them a lot of momentum heading into their first round series. But regardless, today what we're going to be doing is predicting every single Eastern Conference first round matchup for the Stanley Cup playoffs. I was going to do both conferences and talk about the West and the East in the same video, but I don't think the West is decided yet, so I wanted to come out with a timely video for you guys. So I'll make this part about the East, and then sometime next week I'll come out with the Western Conference predictions as well. So let's get into our first matchup. It's the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, a matchup in the sunny state, and I actually don't have a clear winner for this series. On one hand, I could see the Florida Panthers completely dominating the Lightning in this series, but then on the other hand, you have the Tampa Bay Lightning, who should never be counted out in any playoff matchup. So the strengths for the Florida Panthers, obviously they've had a good last few games of the season. They were on a pretty bad losing streak, but I think they've kind of turned things around. I think coaching wise, I think Paul Maurice is going to have this team ready to go in the playoffs. Their offense obviously is dynamic in the playoffs, and they have a lot of rats on their team like Matthew Tkachuk and of course Cousins as well. And then if you flip over to their goaltending, that might be their biggest weakness. I think if goalie Bob is the true form that he was last year, then this team can go as far as he's willing to take them. But if you get subpar goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky in the playoffs, then their season could end in the first round. Defensively, Florida's good. Offensively, they're good. Their biggest question mark, goaltending. Now let's move over to the Tampa Bay Lightning side. I feel like it's sort of the same thing. Are you going to get the Vasilevsky that we all know and love in the playoffs, or are you going to get a Vasilevsky that's been a little bit slow like the rest of this season? Now, obviously, Tampa's offense with Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point being the top line is going to be incredibly dynamic. And when you have Victor Hedman as the stud top player on your defensive unit, you're going to get some good back end help as well. My biggest question mark for them, just like the Panthers, is goaltending. That's what this series is going to be about. I feel like whoever gets the hot goalie is going to come out on top of this series. Either way, though, I see it going pretty lengthy, around 6 or 7 games, but I do see the Florida Panthers coming out on top in this one. I don't think that Tampa Bay has enough energy in them to really go as far as they want to, and I feel like if Florida can just slow down Nikita Kucherov, then they'll be able to find the key to success for this series. Let's move over to the Toronto Maple Leafs versus Boston Bruins. This one's a little bit trickier. I feel like both teams have a lot of problematic areas on their roster and also a lot of strengths. For the Bruins, you have David Pastrnak, your strong goaltending, and your defense. I feel like for Boston to win in this series, you need to slow down players like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander, cut the Leafs' offensive production, and you would probably win this series pretty easily. But if the Leafs' top-end talent is scoring at a high rate and they show up for this year's playoffs, I don't see any way that the Boston Bruins come out of this. I do think it's going to be a tight series, though. I think in order for Toronto to win, they need to put in a lot of pucks and break through from Allmark and Swayman. And for Boston to win, they need to slow down the offense of the Leafs and force them to play their style of game, which is more defensive hockey. I think that the Bruins end up coming out on top in this one. I think it'll be a 7-game series, but I do think that the goaltending for Toronto will be problematic for them in this series, and that Boston will find a way to score goals, while the goaltending for Boston will slow down the Leafs' offensive production. So for me, I have Boston winning this series in 7 and moving on to play the Florida Panthers. Series number 3, we have the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders. Maybe the most boring series from the Eastern Conference. I have to say, I'm a little bit down on this one. They played last year, and I just feel like there's no difference in this New York Islanders team to make me any more convinced this year that they'll win than there was last year. And honestly, the Carolina Hurricanes are 10 times better offensively than I think they were in that last series. So for me, I have Carolina winning this one in 4 games. I don't even think the Islanders get 1 win. And the big reason for that is the slowed down production for Ilya Sorokin and the uncertainty that the Islanders are going to have in net. I do think that the New York Islanders will score a lot, but I think that Carolina is going to double whatever production they have just based on their lack of goaltending. The Islanders, to me, they've gotten into the playoffs, but they feel shaky, and I feel like since Waugh came in, there hasn't really been a identity for this team, if that makes sense. I see Carolina winning the series very easily, especially with the additions they made at the trade deadline. Their offense is great, their defense is top-notch, and with Freddie Anderson playing the way that he has been, I think that he's the best goalie in this series, and I don't think I would have said that a month ago if you told me it's Sorokin versus Anderson. I never would have said that, but right now I think Anderson's going to be the key for the Hurricanes, and again, Sorokin's going to be the key for the Islanders. If he shows up as that number one goalie who's flawless, then maybe the Islanders will have a small chance, but even with that, I don't see this team doing much. Carolina wins this one in 4 and moves on to the second round. Last series of the first round, we have the New York Rangers, the President Trophy winner, against the shocking Washington Capitals. Again, I can't believe that this team made the playoffs, but here we are. This series, again, it's a pretty big wash. I do feel like the Capitals are going to give the Rangers a little bit of a run for their money, maybe win 1 or 2 games, just because either one, the Rangers are going to underestimate how well this team has been performing, or on the other side, maybe the Capitals just have all of the motivation going into this as the underdog. But for me, even in the end, even if the Capitals can muster up this insane amount of energy, I see the New York Rangers winning this series very easily. I was going to say in 5 games, but I do think the Capitals win 2 games, and this series goes to 6. The Rangers come out on top and move on to face the Carolina Hurricanes. So just to give you a little bit of a recap, we have Florida, Boston, Carolina, and New York moving on. I think that's not a bad second round matchup to have. You're going to have Boston versus Florida, which will be an intense revitalization of that rivalry. Then you'll also have 2 division rivals in the Carolina Hurricanes versus New York Rangers, duking it out to get to that Eastern Conference Finals. But I want to know what you guys think about my selections here. Who do you have winning in these 4 first round series? And let me know what you guys think about the final week of the NHL regular season. Did you enjoy the parity that was happening this year? And I've seen a lot of people complaining about sort of the overtime loss thing versus the wins, talking about how the Wings and Penguins would have had more of a chance if it wasn't for the overtime loss and blah, blah, blah. So just comment your general thoughts about the Eastern Conference playoff picture in general and what you think about the matchups and my predictions as well. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be coming out with the Western Conference picks soon, and I will see you guys in the next one.